We're based here but own property in 10 different states and have some other non-core interest elsewhere, but primary business is industrial development and redevelopment. We bought the ground in 2007 that you'll see, the 80 acres, from the school district. I think at one time it was thought that maybe that would be a future site for elementary school. That later changed, I guess, and so we bought the ground with a plan to potentially develop that at some future date. We didn't think it would be quite as long as it has been, but as I think most people know, with the economy and the difficulty that the intermodal had initially in getting started, it put the timetable back a little bit. But we're happy to be here this evening, and I'll let Tracy say a little bit about Zimmer.
Great. And I have a jump drive, if that would help.
Yeah, do you? For some reason, it worked on my test, but it didn't.
And then we have, here's some hard copies of the presentation as well. Maybe we'll go ahead and pass that out to the council, if you could maybe move that side.
Always have a backup plan.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like one too?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and start. I'm Tracy Mann with Zimmer Real Estate Services. I'm the Vice President of our Industrial Division. A huge thank you, Mayor and members of the Council, for letting us come tonight for a few minutes and introduce our project, kind of get your thoughts as far as us potentially annexing our property into the Gardner city limits. With the recent news about all the wiretapping that's going on, I'm guessing that you probably already know what I'm going to say, but I'll maybe say it anyway, and we'll go from there. So, Big Industrial Todd's firm hired our firm, Zimmer Real Estate, to help them market the project for them, 77 acres. This second slide here, just information on our firm. We do about 4 million square feet of transactions a year throughout the country, mostly in Kansas City. We've been involved in developing 2,900 acres of projects over the years, about 28.5 million square feet. And we're really excited about getting to be involved in this project. The next slide here, we wanted to give you an overview of the industrial real estate market in Kansas City. The Kansas City industrial real estate market is 290 million square feet. It's the largest of between office, retail, industrial. It's the largest by far from a square footage standpoint. The market tanked as the national economy and the regional economy tanked in 2008, 2009. But an interesting stat is we're seeing the market, the industrial market, bounce back in a really big way, nationally and in Kansas City. Every quarter of last year, so every quarter in 2012, we saw positive absorption of just under 1 million square feet every quarter. And then the first quarter of this year, we saw positive absorption of 1,160,000 square feet. So as a result, we're seeing vacancy rates be compressed, and we're now down below 6% vacancy throughout the Kansas City metropolitan area. Let me get us to the correct slide if I can. Any reason this wouldn't?
You know what? Let me know, and I will.
Okay, we're on this slide. We're on this slide right here. Thanks, Drew. The last line there is really interesting. So there's 6,900 industrial buildings in the Kansas City market. Of those, 0.88%, so about 60 buildings, are what we call Class A industrial buildings. Class A, 32-foot clear, modern, big bulk distribution center buildings. The best example of that in Gardner would be the Coleman building, for example. So we're really talking about sort of the next wave or the new phase of industrial development nationally, but in our region, and again, less than 1% of the buildings are Class A in the Kansas City metropolitan area. The next slide really gets into the 77 acres that Big Industrial owns. We are calling this park Intermodal Business Park of Kansas City, playing off of the huge advantage, of course, is the BNSF Intermodal facility, which is under construction. As we just discussed, we think the timing is right from a market standpoint as the market continues to rebound for us to kick off a successful project. We also, with the BNSF Intermodal facility opening September 28th, we feel like the time is right to begin to move forward and have these discussions to try to time the market correctly for a successful project for everybody. So next slide, please. We thought we would share with you some recently completed transactions that did not land in Gardner, but if our project was teed up and the timing was right, we think we would have been strongly considered in the development that we have planned. The first one is Home Depot built a 465,000 square foot building in Topeka. That building, just so you know, the city of Topeka gave Home Depot the ground, and they have a 10-year 100% tax abatement. So, and as we go through this, we'll kind of give you some of the backstory so you can see what we're up against in the competitive market. The next deal of note is Blount. They put a 350,000 square foot distribution center up by the airport. The city spent $15 million in infrastructure to kick off that project, the city of Kansas City, Missouri, and the aviation department. And then they received a much lower initial capital expense because their land leases up there instead of land purchases. The PacSun deal, which was done in Olathe off of Lone Elm, that's a 400,000 square foot building. International Paper in Edwardsville, we represented International Paper. They're constructing right now a 280,000 square foot distribution center in Edwardsville. Kimberly-Clark located a 446,000 square foot building in New Century. I think you're aware of the 601,000 square foot speculative building that Sun Life put in Olathe off of Lone Elm and 167th Street. Bushnell leased part of that building. Federal Express leased part of that building as well. The next deal of note would be Musician's Friend built a 701,000 square foot industrial building in Executive Park, which is on the Missouri side, kind of north of the stadiums. And the last deal to mention is that 1A Automotive just leased 190,000 square feet in the speculative building that was built in Olathe. Sun Life built an 820,000 speculative building, and 1A Automotive just leased 190,000 square feet. So all that to say, we thought we'd give you an overview of some of the deals that have happened, and these are all deals that we believe we would favorably compete for and work to and potentially land in our project once it gets up and running. Next slide, please. An important thing to mention is that competition is fierce in this game. There are 6 speculative projects that are underway right now that are being built throughout the Kansas City metropolitan area. The first one is Riverside Horizons. At Riverside, companies can go there and they'll receive cash incentives to move into that project, and the city paid for the infrastructure to build out that park. Van Trust is partnering with Jones Development to build a 380,000 speculative building in Edwardsville right at 435 and Wood End Road, 435 in the river in Wyandotte County. There's a new project that just got announced called Westlink, which is in Shawnee. It's at K7 and basically Highway 32 or close to it. That project, they're receiving 80 to 85% tax abatement for 10 years on that project. Lenexa Logistics Center, which is basically a College and Renner, they are receiving tax abatement for that project as well, and 280,000 square foot buildings under construction. 2 others to mention that are close to this project would be Sun Life spec'd a 820,000 square foot building. That's the picture that you see there on the screen, and that's where 1A Automotive leased 190,000 square feet there. And then Inland Port Number 1 is being built at 191st on 191st Street in Edgerton. ARCO is constructing that building, and they broke ground on it last month. So that building is under construction, 500,000 square feet, should hit the market close to the time the intermodal opens this fall. So all that to say, we're very excited about Intermodal Business Park Kansas City. We project the site will contain 1,168,000 square feet of industrial development. Depends on how the site plan works, depends on what market dictates, but that's a pretty good estimate for you. We believe that there'll be $40 to $52 million of capital that'll be invested in the real estate alone. We project the project will create 400 to 500 jobs with a total annual payroll of $12 to $15 million per year. That does not count the construction jobs. That's just once the buildings are leased and up and running. And we project a total taxes paid to all the taxing authorities over the next 20 years, given a 10-year 75% tax abatement up front, would be $18.4 to $23.9 million in taxes generated by the project.
By the way, one thing that I would note too, that on that the 1,000,001 square foot of development, that is not necessarily in a single building, although it could potentially. We've actually done some preliminary site plans that show a number of different combinations of sizes. I think the kind of the standard or the average size industrial building that is being built in this